Picture this. In 1919, America was not safe for black bodies in Harlem, New York City. Not in the streets, not in the schools, and especially not in hospitals. Now, this is the same world that Jane Cooke Wright was born into. Let's begin her story. Jane Cooke Wright was born in Harlem, New York City, during a time where black Americans were legally segregated, medically neglected, and politically silenced. Hospitals were not places of healing for black people. Instead, they were places of limitations. But there was one thing different about Harlem in one important way. Despite the overcrowding, the discrimination faced, and poverty created by redlining, Harlem was also a center of black intellect. Doctors, educators, and artists and activists lived there because they were pushed out of these white spaces and built excellence anyway. Jane Cooke Wright was raised inside that excellence. Her father, Dr. Lewis T. Wright, was one of the first African Americans to graduate from Harvard Medical School and one of the first black doctors allowed to practice at Harlem Hospital. Even then, he continued to face racism from white colleagues and resistance from hospital administrators who doubted his black excellence. But Jane grew up watching her father treat patients who had nowhere else to go. She learned early on that for black families, medicine wasn't just a profession, it was protection for its people. Dr. Jane Cooke Wright's professional life unfolded during one of the most unequal periods in American medical history. This era was shaped by segregation, redlining, and deep medical mistrust. Systems that determined who lived, who received care, and who was left behind. These injustices were not accidental. They were written into law, policy, and practice. In the early to mid 20th century, segregation was not just social, it was also clinical. Under Jim Crow laws, black Americans were routinely denied access to hospitals, medical specialists, and modern treatments. Many hospitals either refused black patients or placed them in a separate ward with fewer resources, outdated equipment, and overworked staff. For doctors like Jane Cooke Wright, segregation created an additional barrier. Even with elite education and credentials, black physicians were often denied hospital privileges, research funding, and leadership roles. Jane understood early in her career that her knowledge would alone not protect her or her patients. Working at Harlem Hospital, she saw firsthand how segregation funneled black patients into facilities that were underfunded yet overcrowded. These patients often arrived with advanced diseases, not because they ignored their health, but because early treatment had been inaccessible. Segregation didn't just limit opportunity, it delayed care and delayed the cost of lives. Even outside hospital walls, racism shaped health outcomes. During the 1930s, federal housing policies labeled predominantly black neighborhoods as hazardous. Harlem, the community Jane served, was one of them. Banks had refused loans, then infrastructure declined, and also investments disappeared. But this wasn't just about housing, it was about health. Redline neighborhoods experienced higher rates of overcrowding, pollution exposure, and limited access to fresh food, also with fewer medical facilities. These conditions increased rates of chronic illness, cancer, and preventable diseases. Now, Jane Cooke Wright treated patients whose illness were deeply connected to where they lived, environments, and shaped the policy, not by choice, but by force. As a physician scientist, she understood something that many ignored in the industry, and that was you cannot separate biology from environment. Perhaps the most painful injustice to the black community was the betrayal of trust. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. government conducted Tuskegee syphilis study, deliberately withholding treatment from black men who trusted doctors to help them. This study continued even after penicillin became a known cure. Jane Cooke Wright practiced medicine while Tuskegee was still ongoing. She knew many black patients feared hospitals, and with reason. Medicine had not only failed them, it harmed them. This mistrust complicated everything. Delayed diagnosis, refusal of treatments, fear of experimentation, Jane was not just treating disease, she was repairing broken trust. Her decision to focus on personalized cancer treatment was not accidental. Testing drugs directly on human cancer cells before administering them reduced risk, increased effectiveness, and respected patient autonomy in a system that had long denied it. Segregation restricted care, redlining created illness, medical betrayal destroyed the trust. Together, these systems shortened Black life expectancy and normalized Black suffering in the community. Jane Cooke Wright's career must be understood in this reality. She was not just advancing science, she was working against a history that had already decided the Black outcomes. Every breakthrough she made pushed back against a system that created and expected Black patients to die quietly. Her work did not erase injustice, of course, but instead it challenged the idea that Black lives are unworthy of innovation, precision, and care. By the time Jane Cooke Wright entered cancer research in the 1940s, cancer was widely considered a dead end. Doctors could diagnose it, they could observe it, but for most patients, especially Black patients, treatment options were limited to surgery or resignation. Chemotherapy was viewed as dangerous, unreliable, and experimental. Many physicians believed cancer drugs caused more harm than good. Jane Cooke Wright did not accept that assumption. At the time, many cancer drugs were tested on animals, primarily mice. If a drug appeared to shrink a tumor in a mouse, doctors hoped it might work in humans. Jane Cooke Wright recognized a critical flaw in this logic. Human cancer does not behave exactly like animal cancer. Instead of relying on guesswork, she helped develop a new method that brought cancer research closer to the patient. Working with her team, Wright removed living cancer cells directly from human tumors and grew them in a laboratory culture. These human tumor samples were then exposed to different chemotherapy drugs. This allowed researchers to observe in real time which drugs actually killed the cancer cells and which did nothing. For the first time, chemotherapy could be tailored to the individual patient. This was not just a scientific improvement, this was a shift. Cancer treatment was no longer to be the experimental trial and error. It could be intentional. One of the most important drugs Jane Cooke Wright helped validate was methotrexate. During this period, methotrexate was still controversial. Many doctors doubted that a chemical compound could selectively attack cancer cells without killing the patient. Using her tissue culture method, Wright demonstrated that methotrexate could successfully stop the growth of human breast cancer and skin cancer cells by interfering with their ability to replicate. This was absolutely groundbreaking. Her work provided some of the earliest proof that human cancers could respond to chemotherapy, not just temporarily, but meaningfully. This discovery helped transform chemotherapy from a fringe idea to a legitimate life-saving treatment. Today, methotrexate remains one of the most widely used chemotherapy drugs in the world. Jane Cooke Wright did not stop with one drug. She also conducted early clinical research on nitrogen mustard compounds and folate antagonists, helping expand the range of chemical agents available to treat cancer. At a time when cancer research was still in its infancy, her work helped establish the idea that different cancers require different chemical approaches. This laid the foundation for combination chemotherapy, the practice of using multiple drugs together to increase effectiveness and reduce resistance. Modern oncology is built on this principle. Wright's influence extended beyond the laboratory. In 1964, she became a founding member of the American Society of Clinical Oncology. Among the 7 founders, she was the only woman and the only African American. This mattered. ASCO would go into shape the cancer research standards, treatment guidelines, and professional collaboration worldwide. In 1967, at age 48, Jane Cooke Wright returned to New York Medical College as a professor of surgery, head of the cancer chemotherapy department, and associate dean, making her one of the highest-ranking black women in academic American medicine at the time. She later became the first woman president of the New York Cancer Society and served on national cancer advisory boards, helping influence cancer policy at the highest levels. Despite her national recognition, Wright never distanced herself from Harlem. At Harlem's hospital's Cancer Center, she led clinical trials that brought cutting-edge treatments directly to black patients who had long been excluded from medical innovation. Many of her patients were considered lost causes by other physicians, people whose cancer had advanced too far to be worth treating. Jane Cooke Wright rejected that mindset. She treated patients using the latest research available, believing that no one was beyond care. Her work did not just extend lives, it challenged the idea that some lives were less deserving of effort. Dr. Jane Cooke Wright transformed cancer treatment by changing how chemotherapy was developed and applied. Her research helped establish chemotherapy as a scientifically grounded and effective form of treatment, moving oncology away from trial and error approaches. By proving that human cancer cells could be studied directly, she laid the groundwork for personalized medicine, which remains the truth to cancer care today. Beyond science, Dr. Wright expanded who could participate and lead medical intervention. As a black woman physician in the mid-20th century, she challenged racial and gender barriers in medicine, influencing policy, research institutions, and professional organizations to continue to shape the healthcare nation worldwide. Dr. Wright had a long and direct impact on Harlem, a community long affected by medical neglect due to segregation and redlining. At Harlem Hospital, she led clinical trials that brought back cutting-edge cancer treatments to black patients who were often excluded from advanced healthcare elsewhere. Rather than treating Harlem as a testing ground, Dr. Wright treated it as a community worthy of the best medicine available. Her presence improved trust between black patients and medical institutions and demonstrated that high-level scientific research could exist within black neighborhoods, not just in elite white-dominated hospitals. My connection to Dr. Wright's work became deeply personal after connecting it to my aunt's death from cervical cancer in 2023. Her illness opened my eyes and made me realize cancer is real and in a way that textbooks and lectures can never explain it. Cervical cancer is a disease that involves complex decisions, long treatment processes, and constant monitoring. Watching someone I love so much go through that experience made me more aware of how much effort, research, and medical knowledge goes into cancer care. Now, while learning about Dr. Jane Cooke Wright, she helped me understand where many of those treatments and testing methods originated. While my aunt's passing was not a result of unfairness or neglect, her experience showed me how critical cancer research is, not just for cures, but for extending life, improving quality of care, and giving families at least some more time. Dr. Wright's work represents the generations of scientists whose dedication makes modern cancer treatment possible, even when the outcomes are not always certain. Dr. Jane Cooke Wright's legacy continues to shape the future of oncology. Personalized chemotherapy, tissue culture drug testing, and evidence-based treatment protocols all reflect principles she helped establish. These advancements improve how cancers, including cervical cancer, are treated today and researched for tomorrow. For future communities, especially young black students interested in science and medicine, Dr. Wright's life demonstrates the innovation and representation. She shows that progress is built through persistence, research, and commitment to improving human life. Her work connects to the past, to the present, and to the future, reminding us that every advancement in medicine carries the stories of patients, families, and scientists. In conclusion, Dr. Jane Cooke Wright's life stands at the intersection of science, history, and humanity. She entered medicine during a time where cancer was poorly understood, chemotherapy was uncertain, and opportunities for black women in science were rare. Despite these barriers, she helped transform cancer treatment from experimental guesswork into a structured, evidence-based field grounded in human biology. Her contributions did more than advance oncology. They challenged who she was and proved her research. Now, here marks the end of the video. Thank you for following along with me to explain Dr. Jane Cooke Wright's story and history and her legacy. That is all for today.